Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Dr. Jordan Fairley podcast. I am so excited because this is something I have been wanting to put together for a very long time. And I first want to say thank you so much for investing your time and your listening moments into this podcast. I want to also say that I promise to always share my truth and authenticity with you. And so I thought of no better place to start than to share with you the one incident that truly changed my life forever. And so here it is. I'm going to be sharing with you the story about how I drove off a 60-foot cliff. Welcome to the Dr. Jordan Fairley podcast. This show is for people who are ready to implement immediate actionable strategies and insights in health, business, and life. Inside each episode, I'll share with you my biggest aha moments, stories, and interviews to introduce new ways to reframe your current situation and reclaim your life. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Fairley. Welcome to the show. The reason why I decided to start to shoot this podcast is ultimately to tell you that regardless of where you are at in your life, there are always action steps that you can do to take your life one step further. With this podcast, I want to be sharing all the insights, key strategies, action steps, and big aha type of moments that I have had through my life and I will continue to have throughout the rest of my life so that I can share these with you so that you can implement these type of strategies and stories and insights and interviews into your life experiences so that hopefully you can continue to get more out of life and continue to live a life where your self-identity is able to expand and you are able to express yourself to the fullest capacity. In this episode, I want to share the number one thing that happened in my life up until this point, at least, that has shifted the trajectory of my life moving forwards. A little bit of a background. I grew up in Northern California, and I grew up in a family that really focused primarily on one thing and one thing only, and that was track and field. I came from a family where my dad was a track and field coach, a cross-country coach, and from a very, very young age, it was seriously the one thing that our family did. Like my dad, if he spent all day at the track. When my brother and I were growing up as kids, we spent our summers working at the track. The only magazines we had in our house as kids were track and field news and track magazines. When we went on family vacations, we had to make sure that we stopped at the local track or college track to see what it looked like, to see if they had any cool features or anything going on. I tell you all this just because to bring up the main point that my entire self-identity was track and field. I raced in high school and I competed at Chico State in cross country and track in college, and really I loved it. I loved every single thing about running. I loved being out in nature. I loved pushing my body to my limits. I loved breaking out of my own comfort zones, and I loved the community aspect of being a part of a team. I graduated from Chico State in 2010. So 2010 was the last year that I competed at the collegiate level. And throughout college, I dealt with a ton of different injuries. It seemed like every other season I was dealing with one injury after another injury. And so I'd spend this time gear ramping all the way up and getting to the point where I could compete. And then all of a sudden, bam, I would have this huge season-ending injury, and then I'd work for a few more months to try and get back on my feet and try to get to the point where I could try and train and compete at a super high level again. And so I raced in multiple NCAA championships. I was a part of a top 3 national championship team. I had some pretty good success, but I never quite fulfilled the success that I knew I was be able to achieve for myself. Either way, in 2010, I graduated, and 2011 was the biggest incident that changed the trajectory of my life moving forward. Up until this point, I was always interested in being a physical therapist, with all the different running injuries I had. I loved the idea of trying to help athletes get back on their feet and improve their performance. I worked as an athletic trainer for local high schools and helped at the college level, and I worked in the sports performance as well. So I had that background. But one day in 2011, I raced a cross-country race in Sacramento, California. And then after that race, my brother and I were going up to Quincy, California. So way up in the middle of the foothills, middle of nowhere at the top of this canyon. And we were going to meet my parents for a backpacking trip. And so we were driving up this canyon, and a couple days earlier, it had my car checked, I had my tires checked, and so everything seemed cool. But every time I would get up to like 60 miles per hour, my car would start to shake. And I was like, that's really weird. So I got out, I checked the tires, made sure the tire pressure is okay, looked at things, didn't look if there were any holes or anything, get back on the road, start driving. And then I get up to 60 miles per hour again. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, BAM! My car slams to the ground. I veer off to the left into oncoming traffic, almost get hit by a car. And the next thing I knew, I was driving off a 60-foot cliff. And my heart starts racing just remembering this. But I was driving off a 60-foot cliff, and I remember, all I remember at this point was, holy shit, this might be the time where I die. I had my iPod listening to System of a Down on the right. My brother was in the passenger seat. And the next thing I knew, I'm flying in the air, and then I get knocked out. And I don't remember about 2 hours worth of time. Apparently some people came and got us. They dragged us up the cliffside. They ripped off my shirt. I got into the ambulance and went back into town. And I lived. Thankfully, obviously, I'm here. I lived. As a result of this, physically, I broke about 4 ribs on my left torso. My entire torso was twisted about 20 degrees to the right. I had neck pain. I had low back pain. I had all the physical ailments of whiplash. My body freaking hurt. With broken ribs, if you've ever broken a rib, you realize how it's near impossible to do anything. I couldn't sleep in bed comfortably. Getting in and out of bed hurt. I couldn't give people a hug. I couldn't run, or let alone run or bike. I couldn't do any of the things really that brought me purpose. And so I had all of these physical ailments, and all I wanted to do was get back to being able to walk and run and hug my friends and my girlfriend at the time. And I couldn't. And I sunk into this deep depression. I sunk into this feelings of not being good enough. I sunk into the depressive states that I had in college when I had injury after injury after injury. And I really just lost a complete sense of who I was. I had this identity for so long that I was a distance runner, and that my physical abilities, my ability to function and run and compete at a high level is what gave me purpose. Through this, I knew in the past from a different injury, a running related injury that maybe I'll share in a future episode. But I had been to a chiropractor in the past every time I had some sort of ache or pain. So I was like, okay, I am definitely hurt. I guess I'll go see the chiropractor again. Physical therapy wasn't helping, massage wasn't helping, athletic training wasn't helping. I wasn't going to take a bunch of terrible pain medications that would numb me and help me not be able to feel anything in my life, disconnect me even further from my friends and family members. So I went to the chiropractor, and he laid out a plan for me. He looked me in the eyes, connected with me deep at a level I'll never forget. He connected with me and saw the hurt. He saw past my physical ailments. He saw that I really just wanted to get back to a sense of who I was as a person. And so he laid out a plan. He made things understandable for me, and I started to get adjusted. I started to see the immediate improvements of starting to get out of pain. But ultimately, as my spine untwisted, as my torso untwisted back to its natural state, my emotional level and the sense of who I was became untwisted and got back to its normal state. At this moment is really when I decided I wanted to become a chiropractor. I had seen the differences between physical therapy and athletic training, and I saw that what could happen, what was possible at a deep level of physical healing and emotional, spiritual, self-fulfilling healing with regular chiropractic connected care. And so I went to chiropractic school, and with this, I have now led my life helping other people get out of physical ailments. Because when people come into the office, they look at you and they are hurting. They have aches and pains and things that they just want to feel better. But I'm looking at you and I know, how is this really affecting you? How is your back pain or the pain going down your leg preventing you from being able to play with your kid? How is the neck pain and the migraine that you have after a long day of work, of sitting at a desk all day, preventing you from being able to experience the love and the joy and the connection with your spouse? That's what I look at. And I want you to know that regardless of where you are in your life, regardless of where you are with your health, regardless of the physical traumas, the emotional abuse that you may or may not have had as a child, regardless of how much money you have in your bank account, regardless of if you've been screwed over in business transactions in the past, regardless if you're 10 years old or 95 years old, there are things that you can do right now, if you choose to get more out of life, to get back to being the person you've always known you could be. I hope you enjoyed this very first episode of the time that I drove off a 60-foot cliff. Hopefully now you have a little more insight of who I am and what makes me tick, of the one main incident in my life that changed the trajectory and my outlook on life forever. Hopefully this story was able to provide a moment for you to look deep within yourself as well and see a time in your life that changed the trajectory of everything that you have been doing ever since. And know that regardless of the situation you're in right now, there is always more. There are always strategies and things you could do to change your current situation and reclaim your life. Thank you for tuning into this very first episode. If you wouldn't mind doing me a favor and subscribing to the podcast, I promise to always share from a place of authenticity and love, share any insights I have, podcast interviews, and stories to help you achieve more and get back to being the person that you've always wanted to be. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a 5-star review to help this get out to more people who need to hear it, I love and appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a great week.